back again here. We are now going to be going over the left bar of the Ableton workflow. So that is going to be containing all of your sounds, drums, plugins, everything that you're going to be doing in Ableton, you're going to be loading in from this left menu. It's got sounds. This is just stuff that comes prepackaged with Ableton. For instance, we will go ahead and just make a quick little 4-bar thing here, and we are gonna just throw some C major MIDI in here. Okay, so it's just a bunch of different stuff that you can use. You can just throw in a pad and boom, you are rolling. So just different sounds, different instruments, all sorts of stuff in there. Drum racks, straightforward. You just throw it on a channel. This is what they look like. These are just pre-made ones from Ableton or ones that you've loaded in, whatnot. Instruments, straightforward again. These are instruments that come with Ableton. The rest of your instruments, as I said in that previous video, are going to be in that plugins folder. You will need to go to plugins down here in categories because it won't automatically sort those into instruments or audio effects. And then that leads us on to audio effects. That's going to be an entirely different set of videos that I release, just going over these, kind of explaining what the default Ableton audio effects are and how to use them. So this is where those are located. MIDI effects, also same thing. Going to be going over those in a video as well. Clips, this is essentially if you're not feeling very creative or you want something to inspire you, go into the clip section. There's a ton of them that you can go into. Lots of samples, lots of other things that you can do. Click to preview. Sweet, sounds like my middle school music class, I love it. Then on to samples, same thing as clips, just more or less one-shots. Oh, which means I should probably go over what I'm doing over here. So this is essentially going to be your sample preview. If the little headphones are on, then you're able to hear what you select. Up and down, control where you go in here, so. And then right will play the file if you want to repeat it. You could turn on a raw. Certain things like grooves, which we'll get to, are looped. So if you want them to just play once, then you can just hit the raw button. And then if you want to control the playback volume, so if you're going to be going through like some yells or some really obnoxious samples, you might want to turn just the sample playback down without affecting your overall playback. That's this little blue guy is over here. So you can just turn that down to lower your sample volume when you're previewing. And then you've got your packs. If you already have downloaded some packs from the Ableton website, I know they have a bunch of free ones. They have some paid ones that come with drums, samples, all sorts of great stuff. That's where you can find them, are in here. User library, this is stuff that you've made, different presets you've saved, different clips that you've saved, all that shows up in your user library. Current project, that's clips, sample stuff you're using in the project. And then for this, like my production, all that stuff is for my separate places. You can hit this add folder button, add where you've got all of your own samples and whatnot. So great thing to be able to go into. So that is our left panel. The only other thing to mention here is the groove pool. So if you go into packs, I'm sure there's more that you can get, but the ones that come with the core library have always been enough for me. If you go into swing and groove, this is where you can load in the grooves that you want to use. So we'll just use something super drastic to demonstrate what I'm talking about. So let's see here. We'll use swing 1685. So you just double click it, or you can single click it. This is what I was talking about. It'll give you a click track on it to let you kind of demonstrate where the groove's at. So you can grab the groove, click your MIDI track, or whatever track you want, and then give it a groove. And now it's got that groove, so that'll affect, if you hit commit, it'll write it to the notes individually, because that is changing the timing of them as well as the velocity. So it's really good for drums, synths, whatever. If you want to add some swing to it, make it a little bit more human, that's what that's there for. So if you write it, it'll save all that to file and you'll be able to see it. I recommend not doing that though. Typically the way to do it is just to click it in the drop down and then just leave it like that, because even though you can't see it, the groove is there, and writing it means that you can't really easily change it in the future without having to redo everything and having to recommit the groove. So that's why I suggest that. And then if you end up losing this left panel, that's what this arrow on the left side is. Same thing with the bottom panel. Well, bottom panel's the right side, but the help panel can be hidden at least, which will lead us into the bottom panel. Bottom panel is going to be where you're doing all of your MIDI editing as well as your sound clip editing, change all your devices on your tracks, all that's done at the bottom. So for instance, we will go in here since I already have some MIDI. This is that pad that I loaded in earlier from the instruments or from the sound section of Ableton. So we've got that pad here. That is what's referred to as a device to your plugins, whatever instruments you're running. So that is loaded up here in the bottom. So now you might notice that when you click a track, it doesn't show this. It instead shows something blank or shows your MIDI file. You can either switch it by double clicking or by hitting Shift Tab, and that'll switch your bottom area from MIDI editing to device editing, or from sound clip editing to device editing, so on. Not a whole lot more to say about devices. Use drag and drop them or double click them in there, and all your settings are in there. Other thing that we'd want to go over though is your MIDI editing. So you've got a lot of options here. Any of you that are familiar with the piano roll already know what this is. So it's just a vertical representation with the horizontal axis being time, vertical representation being pitch over the course of a piano. Darker bars are your sharps and flats. Your white keys are your whole notes, just like a piano. And you can drag on the top and bottom just like the normal arrangement view to change the zoom level. You can drag the side to zoom in and out as far as where you're at on the piano, as well as move it up and down. So straightforward. Bottom of it is going to be this arrow that is your velocity. So if you're using a velocity sensitive instrument, that is where that is going to be useful. Now you've got info for your clip, so you can name the clip right there. You can also change the color of it there. You can change the time signature of that specific MIDI clip. A lot of this also applies. You'll have the same settings for audio clips as you will for MIDI. Got the groove changing here. You can change the global quantization amount by nudging it forward or backward. And then you can change the range of the notes, so you can really quickly transpose your audio by moving this guy. So that can be pretty handy. Another couple shortcuts that you can use though: Control A to select all of your notes. Shift up and down will change it by an octave, or just up and down will change by a semitone. So quick ways of modifying those. These divide by 2, multiply by 2. That's going to be doubling your tempo or playing it at half tempo. So you play it at half tempo. What used to take 4 measures now takes 8. Double tempo, 4 measures now takes 2. You can reverse them, just does that, just plays it backward, inverts them, flips them, legato, makes all the notes connect together. Duplicate, takes all of your notes, doubles the duration. Quick way to make a 4-bar loop into an 8-bar loop so that you can edit it. So if you wanted, for instance, something to repeat all the way through except change on the 8th bar, rather than having 2 clips, you could make it 1 clip and just change that last repetition. Program change, that's going to be really important if you're sending this out to a hardware instrument that has programs to change, or if your VSTi instrument that you're using has a program change feature, then you can change it with the banks, sub-banks, and program select here. For each individual MIDI clip, which can be pretty useful. From there, start, and that's just declaring the start and end position of the MIDI. So that can be a quick way to switch it around, make it, if it's offset by a little bit, you can make that offset better, or you can fix the offset. Same thing goes with audio files. Then this loop button is super duper handy. If it's off, it's gonna cause you a bit of a headache. So what the loop button does is you can set it to loop a specific length. So if I wanted it to be a 4-bar length, I can just change this loop down to 4, and then you'll see this double tick on your clip, and that will give you the ability to repeat a clip. Whereas if that's off and we extend it past, it's just blank space. The last thing to go into is envelopes. So you can actually change specific envelopes for like your pitch bend, foot pedal, portamento time, volume, all of that can be changed. The envelopes themselves for the MIDI clips can be changed within here. So you can do that. You can select, you want the pitch bends to go up right at the end here. You just give it that. Boom, we've got a pitch bend. So quick way of doing that. Moving on. Lastly, most importantly, we've got our arrangement view. So getting into that, the basics of that, we've already gone over a little bit, like these brackets for looping. The basic movement of it is going to be grabbing either this top bar that has the box or just the bar here. It doesn't seem like a big difference as far as, it seems like a semantic difference, but it does make a big difference when you're really zoomed in on something, because moving this top bar will move it a lot more than moving this guy. So 2 different ways, you just grab, move. Moving on from that, these are all of your tracks. Horizontally showing you time, you've got your time in minutes and seconds at the bottom, time in measures at the top, with it showing you gradually smaller increments as you zoom in. We've got the set button here. Set button, super important. That gives you a marker. So you hit set, boom, got a marker, right click, rename, marker 1, build. So you've got a marker there. That gives you a really good idea. Makes it really of where certain things are happening in the song. You can jump to these locators right up here too. If you have multiple, you can bounce back and forth. So there is that. One other thing that will show up here is back to arrangement view. So let me hop over on my Launchpad real quick, launch a clip that doesn't exist. We have launched a clip that doesn't exist. So what we get is we get these buttons as well as this guy. This guy doesn't show up unless you've been messing around with session view. So what that does is if you record something in session view, it jots everything down into arrangement. If you want to revert it back, that's when you just hit this guy. So that'll revert everything back to the way that you previously had it in arrangement view. So it gives you a real quick way to try out some different things without changing the total arrangement. So if you have a bunch of different tracks in here all laid out, but you're not really sure about something, say a drop or something along those lines, you can quickly go into session view, launch a clip, launch another clip, whatever, and then be able to revert it back without destroying anything. From there, we've got these little guys on the side. So this is we'll go and take them all off and show you what it is at the base and then what they do. So you can collapse everything with these. So when you've clips, they'll just appear as little colored bars. If you hit the arrow, that will show the MIDI or the waveform of the audio if it's an audio track. The other options you have here is you have these drop down boxes. So what these are is these are the subgroup that, or the group that you're going to be changing modulation on. So for this instance, if we wanted to change something on the heavy kick in the mixer section, we click that. This is the subgroup area. That'll be your parameters that can be modulated further on. So if we want to change the chain volume there, we can do that. Now we can draw in the modulation. We can also hit this plus mark, which adds a modulation lane. Those of you that are coming over from FL Studio know what this is all about. That's just going to be a different track that just shows the modulation of one parameter for a specific master track there. So it's a much easier way of changing multiple modulations quickly without having to switch between them over here. And then you can minimize and expand that as well. So that's the basics of what you're gonna show here. Obviously, mixer section, That's just going to be showing you the levels. I/O, input-output section. Pretty straightforward. Every DAW is going to have some iteration of this. So if it's a MIDI section, you're going to be seeing these two boxes here, which are going to be MIDI input. I'll show you what an audio track looks like. You can see here we've got the levels showing my mic right now. So you can change that exterior end from anything else. Resampling is a really common one, so that you can take a bunch of modulations, whatnot, resample it, and then you have that as a waveform now, rather than having to have a really heavy synthesizer running something really complex that might only happen at one portion of a song. So that's there too. From there you can change what input you're getting it from, and then what channel it's coming from. If it's MIDI, if it's audio, boom, pre-FX, post-FX, post-mixer. And then you've got your monitoring section, in, out, auto. So typically you're going to want to keep this on auto. From there, you can set up the sends. So you can have some sends go to some really wonky places, or you can just have them go over to receive tracks, which are these, or return tracks, which are these guys right here. If you hit the R, so the default is a reverb and a delay. So it kind of gives you a more uniform way of doing it. It's essentially just a bus reverb is what it is. So if we go in here, quick way to do it is in the session view, which is also your mixer section. So if we go here, these are where your sends are at. You can enable them over here too. So that's where they are, mixer section. That'll also enable changing the total gain on a track individually, muting it, soloing it, record enabling it, all that good stuff. So if we go back to the beginning and play here, I'll gradually dial up the reverb and delay. So obviously that specific device already has a bunch of delay on it, so you can make tell a ton of difference, but the benefit of having it as a return track rather than as an effect on that track individually is that you're able to dial it up and down without it changing the overall loudness of that sound, because it works less as a dry wet and more of just a wet, if that makes sense. It's just essentially altering the amount that's added back into the signal rather than altering the mix between the dry signal and the wet. The dry stays the same. So that's what those are. Moving on, you've got your track pan, so you can easily pan it left and right. All of this stuff can be modulated to over here. Anytime you change something in Ableton, any setting, it's gonna pop up with that in the modulation section for that track, making it really easy to pop into Ableton or something else. Just quickly mess with the dial, come in here, set it where you want it. From there, you've got track delays. This probably isn't going to be used a lot if you're primarily using samples and VST instruments. But if you are doing live recording, this can be a pretty invaluable tool. What that's going to be is it's going to delay the track by however many milliseconds you want. So if you've got something that's getting desynchronized because of an amp that it's running through or something like that, you can easily make it to where everything's hitting right on time by changing this. That wraps up everything in arrangement view. Let's go ahead and bring ourselves into session view real quick then. So here we got session view. So you'll notice this looks a little different, but will look pretty familiar for those of you that have used DAWs in the past. This is a lot of levels. A lot of levels to change here. Pan pots, sends A and B, which we talked about a second ago. All of the settings here are pretty much the same as they are in arrangement view. You'll notice obviously there's nowhere that you can arrange, which is kind of different between the two, but what changes here is you do have this clip view. So this is kind of Ableton's claim to fame per se, is that it gives people multiple ways of producing. So A lot of people are familiar with the piano roll, arrangement view type production. That's what I personally use, but this can be a really great way to freeform things or to figure out new ideas on the fly. So what this is you make clips, which you can either do by record arming these channels and then hitting the circles and then recording it via MIDI or audio in, or if you already have it set up, you can just go in and change the MIDI yourself. So what this is you have clips loaded up, and then you can launch these clips individually and change them on the fly or stop them. That's what this guy is down here, but you have multiple clips loaded up in here, and you just hit play on them and it'll start playing that clip, and then that's where this guy comes in on here, the input quantization. So you're able to launch clips and they're quantized down to as much as 1/32 time, or you can have it quantized up to 8 bar time. You can change, that's where all these clip settings come in handy, like loop. If you want it to be like a looping bass line or something like that, then you'll want to make sure that that's enabled so you don't have to re-click this every single time. And then if you want it to be one shot, then just have a loop turned off and you can just click it here and it'll just play that one shot. So you can have all sorts of great stuff going on in here. And then from there, you've got a track status display. So this is essentially just going to be how many times it's repeated since you started it, how many bars it's going by. So pretty easy. And then you can stop it by hitting one of these empty ones or hitting this guy. Likewise, you can launch everybody on one row by hitting the play button on the master. So that'll launch every single clip that's in there. And then you can switch it back to arrangement, stop all clips, all that good stuff over here on the master channel. Which brings us to our master. You've got a few different things you can do with this. You can set these sends to pre or post. So you can have a send pre, so it'll bring back these returns before the fader. So if you change the gain on the fader, it will also change the total amount of these guys. That can be helpful if you're using reverb or something like that and you don't want to change the overall level of the reverb compared to your dry signal. Post, it's going to be after the signal, or after the fader, I mean. So yeah, that's everything over here for the most part. We've got the track delays too, and then the crossfade section, so you can kind of crossfade back and forth between different things on here. And hopefully that's cleared anything up. If there's anything I missed as far as the workflow of Ableton, the arrangement view and the session view, or anything that you guys would like me to cover, just go ahead and leave that in the comments down below, and I'll try to get back to that. I'll add it to this playlist so that it's there for you. But hopefully this has covered everything that you would need it covered. Thanks, and have a great day.